Well, hey, everybody, it's Joel Tappin here, and in this second video on Storm over Asia, we have finished up collecting the income. I believe we did it right. Please, by the way, comment and let me know if I did anything wrong. And I'd love to know how to play this right if I'm doing it wrong. Anyways, there's something really cool about this game that's kept my attention. Usually a game that's this obtuse, I wouldn't spend any time on, except that there's something about this that's got a great narrative to it. And so I keep coming back to it. Well, we've generated the income. We've done the random events. Here's the charts. Here we are right here. Economic phase. This will all be done secretly and then revealed. And in Vassal, you can use the notes feature here. You can use the delayed tab to send your planning for your economic planning. You can do all that simultaneously, and everybody gets it revealed at the same time. But since I'm just doing this solo, and I feel like there's so much going on in the game, I can't keep track of what everyone's trying to do against one another. So it actually kind of works in a weird sort of way, solitaire. Anyways, enough of that. Let's go ahead and plan out what we're going to do with our tile points and our action tokens. Now, the tile points are collected in here in the scenario card displays because that's open, accessible information. It is forbidden to hide that from other players. However, what your action tokens are, you need a private place to consult that. So that's why those are in the private hand windows. Looking at the Japanese random category that they drew the Econ Military random event. That means they can use their flexible token, which is so inappropriately named. It's everything but flexible. It's the most inflexible. Okay, mate. Yeah, it is. It is the most inflexible of the tokens. So I'm going to call this the inflexible token. And the reason for that is this action counter can only be used for the category that you selected for your random event. So I can use this to build something with my economy, do some construction, either naval construction, construct a ground piece, something like that, or I can use it to build a military counter of some kind. Well, I guess that would be your econ. So I can use a 0 token, which is kind of a bluff token. The action counter here, that's not going to cost you anything. It's just a bluff marker. We're going to put these face down so our opponent can't see what it is. We're going to try to fool ourselves here. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have a total of 8 points worth to spend, and we know we have 10 tile points. So despite the hardships to the economy right now, we are able to do what we want to do. We have enough points to spend all of our tokens. So let's just, for grins, go ahead and take a 1 token and hide it and put it here, showing that we're going to spend 1 for research. You can always put 1 marker in here for research. I believe you can put an additional marker in there if it is your flexible token and your category was research. You can put a second one in there if you want. I like to save at least 2 markers, maybe 3 for diplomacy, especially later in the game. But for now, I don't think that that's a big a deal. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to hold on to a 2 and a 1 for diplomacy. You know what? Let's hold on to those 2. Yeah, I think we're going to do it this way. We're going to hold on to those 2 markers for diplomacy, and we're going to take all 3 of these. The ship marker can only be used for ship construction, and the flexible token, and a generic 1 token. And we're going to put this down here, showing that we're going to build some ships. I put 3 points worth of action tokens down there because a ship. We are in the spring of 1935, so we look at this column of ships that we are in the process of building, and the BC-3 Kirishima needs to go 2 more boxes before it can be launched and then show up in our Garrison display and help us with our support. And so what I can do is when I spend the 3 markers there, when all of this gets revealed, that's going to be enough to push this down 1 box. And the next spring of 1936, I'll be able to maybe move it to the next space and launch it. When we get into summer, I can spend 3 points worth because the hull has got a 3 here. That's how many action points you have to spend. And so I'm going to use a 3 action counter in the summer to launch the Haruna, and that'll put it down in this box here. So that's why I'm doing this. This is going to help me down the road. All right, for Japan's enemy, China, we have 2 points worth and 3 tokens, so we're not going to be able to do a whole lot there. I'm going to put down a big fat 0 here for research. We'll put that there. And I just don't have the money to spend on research right now. Britain's got 3 points to spend, and they got 3 action tokens. So let's spend them, baby. We're going to go ahead and use a 1, and we're going to put, whoops, lost that marker. And I'm going to put them down here. What this box does is, as long as the South China Coast is not been conquered by Japan, meaning it does not have 5 Japanese flags in it, that's how you know that something is conquered, then they can spend 1 action token to send 1 of their tile points over to, basically this takes 1 of Britain's tile points and gives it to China. So call that economic aid. We're going to use another token here and put it for research. Holding onto the other one would help with diplomacy, but let me just say this about the map spaces. Let me zoom in here a bit so you can see this. There are all these map spaces. 6 of them have a green background, and they're associated with Southeast Asia. You have India, Burma, Thailand, Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, and Australia. Each have 4 spaces in them. That's the maximum number of flags that can be put into them. Each have a trade pact marker in it. That will help generate, each one of those will generate 1 extra income for your nationality. You get it by having 3 of your own flags in those tracks. Bear in mind that each box can only have 1 flag. So that's how you get trade pacts. However, there is this Japanese aggression index display here, and as long as there's no markers on here, the JAI is at 0, effectively. As the Japanese aggression index moves through events, through Japanese actions, etc., there's different things in the game that'll punch this up. Once that number punches up to a +1 or above, then anyone can do diplomacy in Southeast Asia. Until that time, no diplomacy is allowed there. That leaves the diplomacy only to China, and only the Russians, Nationalist Chinese, and Japanese can do diplomacy in China. And so there are a number of regions, I think there's 9, Yunnan, Southern China, South China Coast, Eastern China, Shanghai, Central China, Sichuan, Shenxi, and Northern China. Each has 5 boxes instead of 4. They have a trade pact in 5 of those locations. Northern China, Central China, Shanghai, Sichuan, and South China Coast. So the same rule applies there. If you get 3 flags in there, you get the trade pact. That helps you economically. If you have 5 markers there, only Japan can do that, and that signifies conquest, and you cannot achieve that through diplomacy. So if there's already 4 flags there and you win a diplomatic success, you'll have to use that by removing somebody else's flag. You control an area if you have at least 2 flags and more than anybody else. So right now the Russians control Shenxi, the Nationalists control Central China, Sichuan, Eastern China, Southern China, but not Yunnan because they only have 1 flag there. The warlords control South China Coast, and that's pretty much the score there. Now, all of that control affects Chinese nationalist cohesion. So the Chinese cohesion, because the Russians control Shenxi, that hurts them, but nationalist control helps them. Nationalist control, however, hurts them when it comes to having a united front, locked arms, in other words, with the communist faction. So this is kind of how the civil war that's going on in the background is portrayed in the game. So it's kind of a, if you get more nationalist control, it helps you here, but it hurts you over here, is the thing. All right, so with that background in mind, they've spent their tile points for now and saved a couple of markers here for diplomacy. The British have done pretty much what they can do. They got 3 tile points. They used 2 of them. This one's not going to help them much, so they're just going to sit on that the rest of the turn. And the Russians, they got only 1 tile point. They got 3 action tiles, but not a whole lot to work with. So probably just sit on that and bank that 1 action tile and do nothing this turn. Now, let's reveal everything. Normally, you would reveal all this planning, you would write it out on paper, and everybody would tell everybody what they're going to do. We're just going to do it in sequence here. We'll start with research. The Japanese got one action tile here, and so they're going to go ahead and open their display. We're going to get rid of a 2 marker by returning it to the supply and drawing a 1. That's how we collect change. We'll just pull a 1 counter out. So we paid for that tile, and we open up our research display, and the Japanese are going to get 3 research points plus 1 intelligence point that can only be used for intelligence categories, and it has to be the last place category, a category with the least amount of research. So I'm going to use the spring 1935 marker here, and you can adjust these by right-clicking on it and then adding the year to it. And we're going to use this to get Chinese puppets started. And just so I remember that that's an Intel, I'm just going to make a note and say Intel on it. So that's how we're going to spend that Intel point. We get 3 research points plus the value of the action token we use. So we used a 1 action token, and we'll return that to our hand window. So we have a total of 4 action points to spend, and this is where it can get really confusing. You can only add 1 box to every technology. A technology cannot get multiple boxes spending these points. In other words, I can't spend all 4 points on jets, for example. When you start getting more technology and these start moving up, you realize that if you spend your first research point, it has to be in a white box. It has to be a technology with a white unshaded box, unless all white unshaded boxes already have been researched. Your second point can be in the white or light gray bands. Okay. Your third can be in any of the 3 bands. It can be white, light gray, or dark gray. Your 4th research point goes back to white only bands. Again, if they're all researched, you can do white or gray, and on it goes for there. So we have 4 points to spend. Nothing's been researched, so this is going to be super easy. We're going to get Naval Air Training. We're going to clone the token and go for carrier design, and then we're going to get the battleship design thing going, because we need to get to these results so we can, first of all, build more carriers. I can't build any more carriers until I've gotten to this result box here. I can't build the level 4 battleships until we get to this box, and there's only a couple more 3-level battle cruisers that we can continue to build and lay down until we get to that box. So we need to do that. And then for our 4th one, let's go ahead and get our economic preparation going, because what the hey, that's something that's always going to help us out. So that's their research, and we done. Now we didn't spend any markers here for China, so we're going to go ahead and return that to their hand window. And we're going to, well, we probably shouldn't return it to the hand window, because you could use it conceivably for bluffing and diplomacy, and you shouldn't have access to that. So let me undo and just leave that there. Their research, they get 1 research point and an intel point. So we'll use their intel point to get their KMT tokens up. If we get to this box, we get to take the level 0, which is a useless KMT token, out of this pile permanently and replace it with a level 1 token. And so we'll go ahead and try to get that research going. And then we'll use our 1 point to enhance the Japanese or the Chinese army. If we get to here, that helps us by getting a +1 to our combat, which conveniently is buried in the rulebook's rules on combat and appears on no play aid to my knowledge. So bravo, guys. Well done. So that's the research for China. There is no research for Russia in this game on the Asian side, so we don't have to worry about them. But the UK also gets 1 research point plus whatever they used here for a total of 2. And so we will go ahead and reduce this, return this to supply, and we're going to draw 1, 2 level 1 tokens. And so we made change for that, and we'll return that to our window. Well, we shouldn't return any of these to our window because they should not be used for diplomacy. So we're going to leave those alone. 2 points plus an intel. For their intel, let's go with code breaking. Sounds like a good plan. Let's build up Singapore, because we know what happens if you don't do that. and maybe let's get the Australian Army up to snuff. Getting into this box will help the UK in that it will improve, if I open the right window, it'll improve their cohesion, which helps their income, and that's always a good thing. So there you go. There's the research, and that's how research is done in the game. Easy peasy. Construction, let's go ahead and take care of that now. This is going to cost 3 action point or 3 tile points for what we did here with the Japanese, so we'll return that to supply. And we will increase the building of the Kirishima, which does not help us on the Naval Garrison. And we should advance this over now that the Americans have built the spring 1935 builds. So every turn these markers moved and affect the support gained by having either positive Japanese naval garrison or a deficit in that area. All right, so you have to keep building. If you don't keep building and finish ships and lay down new ones and finish ships, the Americans are going to win the naval race. So you're in an arms race if that's not enough to keep track of if you're Japan. The British here, they also want to help out the Chinese, so we'll open up both windows here. We're just going to take this 1 token and slide it over to them. And that will complete our builds. So I think we got time to do diplomacy, so let's go ahead and do a diplomacy round. First thing that happens here in diplomacy, step 1, is Japan places 1 diplomatic counter in China, 1 diplomatic counter in Southeast Asia, if they're so allowed. You can also place military counters in Southeast Asia and China to act as a way of doing diplomacy. It's gunboat diplomacy. You're intimidating them with your military counters. Military counters, let me explain really quickly here. Military counters, Japan starts with a Navy military counter and an Army military counter. You could conceivably have 4 of each. Now, in order to have 4 of the Army, you would have to have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'd have to have 10 more positive markers on this display than negative markers. So when you have only 1 or 2 positive markers, right now there's 1 more positive than negative, so we'd be at +1 surplus. If you got +2, nothing would change. If we got to +3, we could add a second military counter. +4, +5, and we get up to +6. If we had 6 more markers than negative markers, then we could get a 3rd military counter for the Army and so forth. So same principle for the Japanese naval garrison. So right now we have a surplus. We're in the +1 band. Next turn, let's imagine for a second, next turn I don't finish building the Haruna and launching that to put a marker on here. The Americans are going to slide this thing over and we're not going to have any surplus, and we're going to end up actually losing our naval military counter. So that's why we got to keep that thing going, because we can use this for diplomacy, and that's a good thing. So we're going to use this thing for diplomacy, and what the heck, where should we use that thing? Well, first of all, I should not have the 1 marker I shouldn't be able to make use of the 1 marker, so I'm going to set that aside for now. I'm just going to use the 2 2s. I'm going to place 1. I can only place 1 in China, and let's go ahead and put this one, say, here in northern China, and we'll put the Navy, we'll send them to intimidate Shanghai, and we'll stop there and see what happens next. Go into step 2. The Allies, the British and Chinese, can place their markers. There's really no place for the British to do anything, but 2 diplomatic counters for the Chinese can be used, and possibly 1 in China. Russians, I don't want to spend their marker in China right now. They only have 1 tile point, so we're going to hold on to that. We're just going to use the 2, open the wrong hand up. Yeah, we're going to use just the 2 here, and there's no need for concealment because the Chinese have already used their 0 marker, so there's no reason to bluff here. So they know they can block the Chinese in Shanghai here. Maybe it's a good idea to put this one in Szechuan and get the trade pact going. So I think that might be a good use of that. There's no sense in going here because doing the math and seeing what's been revealed so far, I'm reasonably sure that that's a level 2 diplomacy marker, so they're going to win. And I'd prefer to hold on to the military counter to use in defense if there's any aggression. So we're going to hold on to that for now. We'll go on to step 3 and step 4. Japan gets to place 1 additional diplomatic counter in China and Southeast Asia if such is allowed. And so we will go ahead and use our level 2 marker to make sure we win in Shanghai. We know that with that, that's going to offset and win. And so now we're going to reveal everything. If there was events that could impact things, we would reveal that now. There aren't any, so we'll just kind of move on here. Start here in northern China. The Japanese got 2 points of diplomacy and nothing for the Chinese. So we'll go ahead and spend the 2 tokens. So let's see here. We'll spend the 3, and then the 4 will cover the cost of the other Japanese token. So what this allows us to do then is take a flag, and we'll get to put one here in northern China. So it doesn't give us control or anything, but it's going to help. It's a step in the right direction. And then we'll just remove that to our hand window because that's all done. Shanghai, we have 2 points plus 1, so total of 3 points worth of Japanese diplomacy to 1 of China, so Japan wins this easily and gets to place a second flag, and this is going to have a couple of ripple effects. Now, we spend the 2 tile points for this, but we do not spend tile points for the military counters. The cost of having this is represented by your military upkeep, so we don't have to worry about that. China, however, does have to spend a tile point for using that. So we're going to go ahead and return that to supply. They spent a 1 to force Japan to spend a 2. That's what they ended up doing. So that's still a good trade. And then in Szechuan, the Chinese are going to get to use this and collect the trade pact. And we'll spend, whoops, return to supply and draw 1. Okay, so we'll return everything to our hand windows except the military counters for now. Oops. Return to hand windows. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and take this and send this to the Chinese scenario card and put this on here to help their income the next turn. So the 0 and the 1, that's going to help them out. Okay. That's the end of diplomacy. So I think, oh, Shanghai has come under China. I knew there was something else. Shanghai has come under Japanese control. So let's go over to Shanghai here. And we're going to put this marker, draw it off of its holding box, right click on it and send it to the Chinese card. And also send this to the Chinese card. So if Japanese control, there's 2 markers that are going to go to the Chinese scenario card. This marker here is going to impact their united front in a positive way. The Japanese control basically brings the communists and the nationalists closer together. This will come and offset the KMT marker that they got to place this last turn. So next turn, without that KMT marker there, they're going to have a -1 for support. So they'll probably have to keep using their KMT to make up that difference. All right, so that is the end of that. Now we draw a warlord card. One of the 9 warlord cards is drawn. It is Central China. There is not 4 markers placed there, so we get to take a warlord and place it into one of the empty spaces, and that means the nationalists have just lost control of Central China. So we'll take Central China here and return that to the scenario card, which hurts their cohesion. As you can see, we'll slide all the markers to the left. And let's see, Central China, this does help the United Front, brings the communists and the nationalists closer together. Funny how chaos can bring people together. And that's it for diplomacy. So there you go. That is how diplomacy works in the game. I think we'll go ahead and call this one quits here. And next video, what we'll do is we'll look at combat and see what happens. I think now might be a good time to try to attack. And maybe if we can't gain full control of northern China, it might put the Chinese in a really powerful position in northern China. So we'll go ahead and explore that one in our next video.